Hi guys, welcome to the Watch Hobbyist channel. So today I've got for you the Omega Seamaster. This is the ceramic model, and as of 2017 this is the very latest version. So this watch came around a few years ago. I think it was around about 2012 or 2013. So it's been out a few years now in this iteration. Before that we had the non-ceramic models, which had an aluminium bezel around the edge, and they also had like a blue wave dial. This actually moved on from the blue wave dial, so I guess being sort of lacquered or ceramic or whatever the dial actually is, it would have been too difficult to create, or they maybe just saw an opportunity to sort of go to what the Planet Ocean looks like, which has like a very glossy black dial. They also did a liquid metal Planet Ocean, which has a very similar look in its depth to the gloss that's on the dial, so I'm not too sure why they actually went away from the wave dial. It's just my speculation. Now, the reason I've never had one of these particular watches is because I could never decide whether to go blue or black. If you asked me on the previous model with the wavy dial which one to go for, I would absolutely say go blue, 100%. But I really couldn't make my mind up on the ceramic, because the dial has such an incredible sort of shine to it and gloss to it and depth to it, therefore, that both of them look absolutely great, and there's not really anything to say that's bad about both. Now, believe it or not, this is the blue one, but on the screen it's probably looking quite black. Now, it goes from a really sort of inky blue to a very dark black. Hopefully can get some kind of idea on the screen, but I'm really struggling with the colouring actually, because it's just such a dark colour at some points, but you can see there is a hint of blue there, and that's really why I ended up with going with the blue, because I felt like the blue absolutely gives you the best of both worlds. It's going to be a nice bright blue on a sunny day, but as soon as you get into like a sort of more indoor lighting, that type of thing, or a dark outdoor scenario, it tends to start to look black. So I really like how the colours play around. With the black one, it just obviously always looks black, and that's why I ended up with the blue one. But I really did have a debate for many years about the blue and black one, which is why it took me so long to get one of these. But the thing for me is, it is every bit as good as I expected this watch to be. Now, at the price point it is today, it's just under £3,000 here in the UK. It's not, let's not go as far as a bargain, but for me it's still probably one of the best bang for buck watches out there. Its most likely competitor that I always think of straight away now would be, say, the Tudor Black Bay, but for me they are quite different. The Tudors are quite slab-sided, quite thick watches. Yes, they do now have an in-house movement, but although it has a great power reserve, I'm not quite sure how anti-magnetic and things like that the movements are, if it's actually any better in terms of things like technical abilities to the actual Seamaster we see here in front of us. Now, the Seamaster has an ETA based movement, so ETA or ETA or whatever you call it. It's been around for a long time, that movement, there's no doubt about it, and I guess there's nothing particularly hugely fancy about it. But this is the Co-Axial version. It basically has an escapement on there that's less prone to wear and tear, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the rest of the movement isn't prone to wear and tear. So a little bit of marketing in there somewhere, but still it's a more advanced movement than a standard ETA. And for me, I don't really care too much about movements, as long as it tells the time relatively accurately. I'm more about the aesthetics generally of the watch, and if I like the watch, not always about the movement inside. If you ask me about cars, yeah, the engine's very important, don't get me wrong, but in terms of this watch, I've always been absolutely fine that it's got the ETA. So comparing it to the Tudor, like I say, the Tudors, they do now have date models, so they can be classed as more comparable, I would say, because comparing this watch to the initial Tudor Black Bays, that was a non-date watch, whereas this is a date watch. For me, I found the date complication very useful. First thing I noticed about this watch was it's one of the few, well, the few watches in general, I would say, or not just the few Omegas, to have some incredible anti-reflective properties. So I had the Omega Seamaster 300, it was the Spectre model, and I loved it to bits. It was an incredible watch, very, very hard to find now, and it was a lovely thing to own. But the problem for me was that I took it on holiday once, and I could barely read the time a lot of the times that I was looking at the watch. It would reflect the light back at me like crazy. I think on the higher end 300s, so like the gold ones, things like that, they do actually give it a better coating. But this watch, for its price point, it's one of the best out there, and the time is very, very easy to read. I mean, I've got an LED light like on this watch, and of course we get the point where just the light reflects back just like that. But most of the time, you can see how legible that watch is to read. Of course, if you put any watch under direct sunlight or under a light like that, it's going to reflect back. But you can also see the depth of the actual dial, so it's not just about the crystal, it's about the dial itself as well, and just how good that looks. And it really mixes well with the ceramic bezel. So the ceramic of the bezel is very shiny, very glossy. So this watch, there's a term called dress diver, and I don't use terms like that, but at the same time I can definitely see how versatile this watch would be. So it's the type of watch that, you know, you can imagine being on holiday and you would go swimming all day in the sea, and then you'd come out and then you get ready for dinner at night and still be able to wear it and feel like it's a bit dressy. So it has the form and function going on. It's 300 meters water resistant. It does have the HE valve here at the 10 o'clock point, or just around 10, just past 10 o'clock. Bit of a point of contention because some people absolutely hate that and detest it, and other people like myself don't mind it. Now the reason I don't mind it personally is because it's a signature of the watch. So it's a bit like the Rolex Submariner has a bubble over the Cyclops over the date. Some people love it, some people hate it, but again, for me, I don't mind it because it's a signature of that watch, and it sort of helps you to know straight away you're looking at an Omega Seamaster professional in this case. You know, for me, I like things that sort of differentiate watches. I don't like all watches to be the same. I think they should have things that are a little bit crazy sometimes, and the HE valve, I probably would never ever use it. I can't imagine me going saturation diving, to be honest. So it's a useless feature, but at the same time, so is 300 meters water resistance on myself, but I still like the watch. The great thing about this watch in terms of its dive abilities is the Lume. It has this incredible blue lume, which I'm going to try and show you now. So hopefully that comes across on camera well. You can see that all the hour plots are lumed in blue. Now I'm not sure if you can tell so well on this setting of the camera that I've got, but you can see the hour hand is blue, but the minute hand all the way along it has green, and at the edge where the arrowhead is, that's green as well. So it's just to differentiate the time. I guess if you're diving, the theoretical thing would be that you see the minute hand straight away because it stands out with a different colour. However, one thing against that is that obviously any modern luminescence tends to die off relatively quickly. So you'll charge it up under sunlight or under a lamp or whatever, and then within a few minutes it's died down to a level where it's going to stay at for probably quite a while and then slowly just drop off. Within really sort of a few minutes, that green of the minute hand seems to just blend into the blue of everything else. So it actually becomes less easy to differentiate between the two just because of the colour. But the skeleton hands, many years ago I never actually liked the skeleton hands, but that was on the wavy dial. I think it was too busy, the dial, to make the hands stand out. And also the reflections going on with the crystals of the old models, they didn't really allow you to see the time so well, in my opinion. But on this new one, because it's so glossy, the hands do stand out, and I think the skeleton hands work really, really well actually on this model. Now, it's not to say that there aren't a couple of things that would change on this watch. The first thing would be possibly the hands. If they brought out a sword hand version, I would absolutely love that. I'm not going to lie, I would prefer that over these hands, but this is also another signature feature of this watch, so I'm not so ready to sort of say that it absolutely should have sword hands, because at the end of the day, when that minute hand passes over the date, you can still read the date, things like that. That's the whole point of it, I guess. and again, signature little details like that appeal to me. But yes, if they brought out a sword hand model again of the Seamaster, I think it would be an absolutely massive hit. You know, I can really see a lot of people I know would buy that. The other thing as well is the clasp. So I'm just going to show you the clasp here. I've still got the sticker on mine because I just seem to sometimes do that. It's just, I don't like to scratch the clasp, and you can barely tell the sticker's on, so as long as it will stay on, I generally keep them on there. But this clasp is adjustable, but in the most basic of manner, so it has a sort of dive clasp thing there. And obviously your wrist may get hot during the day and you want to just adjust it a bit, but that's adjusting it way too much. That's so it can go over like a dive suit or whatever. So I do believe that you can go to Amiga and you can buy another clasp that allows for some adjustment. It doesn't allow a huge amount of adjustment. It's probably like the one that's on my Speedmaster 60th, which you may have seen the review by now. I'm not sure which order I'm going to put these out in. So you do get some adjustment, but you don't get a huge amount of adjustment. And it's therefore going to be great for sort of hot days and cold days and temperature changes and things like that, but not necessarily if you are a diver. So you may want to sort of take into account what type of usage you're going to have for the watch. So the clasp as it stands is quite basic, but if you get the other clasp for it where it can extend, then you've at least got a bit of adjustability on it. I would imagine at some point they're going to update this watch, and I hope they do change things like the clasp. If they change the hands, then great. If they don't, then I'm really not too bothered. Like I say, I quite like the hands that are on it. But one thing that I hope they don't change too much is the movement, because if they start going to the in-house movement with this model, I think that's what will absolutely ruin it. I just think this watch is the type of watch that a lot of people get bought as presents. It's a type of watch that would maybe be your first embarkation into sort of the premium watch world, you know, your first Amiga maybe, or you don't want to stretch to the price of a Submariner, and really this is half or under half the price, but you know, just as much a great watch for most part. So you know, this is a great watch as it stands at this price point. But if they do what they've done to other watches and what most companies now are doing, which is jumping on the bandwagon to try and improve the features on paper and charge more for them, then I think that could definitely dilute the Seamaster Professional a little bit. The other thing as well is, as it stands, this is quite a thin watch. I'll get my calipers out in a second and I'll actually measure it, but it's not a thick watch. It's just a nice slim line sort of dive watch. It will go under the cuff of a shirt. You know, it's not thick, it's not oversized. It's a 41mm diameter, but it doesn't have large dimensions in sort of the length and height categories. If you start adding these new in-house movements where they've got quick set hour hands and things like that, yes, the functionality to me is improved, but you're also probably going to increase the thickness, and I think that would be a shame, because all the character of this watch is in its size and it's in its price, and it's just as it stands right now. I mean, you've got the Amiga logo that's applied to the dial. You know, everything about this watch really speaks volumes for a watch of this price point to have the features it has. And there's no doubt about this watch lasting forever. It feels like an absolute tank, but it's not so heavy that it's uncomfortable, but it's got polished chamfers everywhere on the case. It's got a lot of attention to detail if you really look closely at it, and it's not that much money in 2017 compared to a lot of other watches. So it would be a real shame if they go too far with it, and I just hope to, you know, they're welcome to change it. Of course, it's their watch, but I just think, you know, if they go too far with it, it may just cause a few issues with collectors such as myself. There is one thing that's a bit of an elephant in the room with this watch in particular, which some people talk about on forums, and that is going to be the black date wheel with the blue dial. Now, if you get the black model, it does have a black date wheel, so obviously that matches up, but the date wheel stays for the blue model as well. And what some people dislike about that is the difference in colour. Now, for me, because the watch changes from light blue to such a dark inky black anyway, I find that in use I really don't notice it, but when I was first examining or like scrutinizing the watch to decide which one to buy, it did stand out to me. So I'm not going to say it doesn't stand out a little bit, However, it's really nothing to be talking about particularly, because if you think about it, a lot of watches with black dials actually have a white date wheel with a black text or black font, but people don't tend to moan about that because it's become the norm. This not being a blue date wheel, I guess, just makes people talk, but I don't think you could really match the blue particularly well because the color changes so much of the dial. So it just, for me, the black date wheel, in my opinion, is fine. I have no issues with it whatsoever. I think it's more than fine. The only other thing to mention is the movement. There is a myth that the movement inside here, the 2500 movement, is a bit unreliable. Now, the first iterations of the 2500 many years ago, I think it was the 2500C, or maybe that was just an update to the 2500A, I don't know. The 2500C certainly was known for some faults, just stopping working and things like that. This model here, and probably any that you see in a shop now, is hopefully improved upon that. I believe this is the 2500D, and you really don't seem to hear of many issues with these. These seem to be a very reliable movement and a very reliable watch, therefore. This one's been very accurate for me so far. I think it's well within tolerance, so I'm very happy with that. I've got the great Lume, I've got this bezel which is relatively grippy. I would imagine underwater it might be a bit slippy compared to something like a Submariner or a Pelagos or something along those lines, but yeah, for overall I would say that actually this is a very, very good watch for the money. Now I'm just going to give you some dimensions of the watch because I want to know myself actually, but we obviously know that it's a 41mm diameter. The height of the watch is there, so that's 13mm or so, something like that. I'm about on the center of the crystal there, so just around about 13mm, so that's not obviously tall at all compared to a lot of watches today. And then if I just do this, then we actually get the dimension. Now that is the length of the watch, so it's going from the lug here to the lug here. Now that makes a lot of sense to me, just being under 47mm, because when I wear this watch, being a 41mm watch, I think that's around about the same size as what the Seamaster 300 is compared to, so it's a 41mm diameter. But that Seamaster 300 actually wears quite a lot larger on my wrist than this one does. So that's another thing in this watch's favour. You've got a nice short lug to lug, which means that on a wrist such as mine, and I will show you a wrist shot, on a wrist such as mine, basically I've only got a 6.75 inch wrist, so I don't want a massive watch, and especially with this type of watch where I'm not going to wear it all the time, but when I do I want it to be comfortable. For me the main thing is that it's not big and cumbersome, and that is far from the case with this watch. So really it's like a 99% perfect watch, and being honest, do we actually really need anything more than this? I know there's been some limited editions of it and special editions, and some of them are quite cool. There was a Rio Olympics one and stuff, but for me this is my favourite. It's the standard model, just like the Speedmaster Professional. The standard model is so good, and it takes so much to beat that. It's the same case with this. It would take an awful lot to beat this watch. So thanks for watching this video looking at the Seamaster Professional. This is the ceramic model, and it's currently 2017 when this video is being filmed. It's a 41mm diameter watch, currently around about the £3,000 price point, and very, very nice on the wrist. Very nice to wear, and gets a lot of attention, a lot of nice positive comments. I think it's a fantastic watch, and if you haven't considered one of these before, then I would definitely suggest that you sort of go into a local Omega shop and just have a look at one, see if you like the black or the blue, because I think personally the blue is best, but some people will say the black one is best. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed the little review. Please make sure you give me a like if you like the video, and please make sure you subscribe to the Watch Hobbyist channel. You can also get me on Instagram at Watch Hobbyist. If you just have a look on there, you'll see my latest watches and watches that I wear out and about. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again soon.